I was actually looking at the calendar this morning, just realizing how much of our lives are governed by time.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Schedules, deadlines, the clock on the wall. It is the default setting for how we process reality. But then I started reading through this stack of documents you sent over for today's deep dive.
And I kind of threw a wrench in that.
That is an understatement. I realized I might be looking at literally everything all wrong. We are digging into Regal Torah Chapter 1 and the Saints Study Guide Chapter 1.
Two very unique sources.
Honestly, if you handed this to someone without the title page, I don't think they'd guess in a million years that this is a translation of Genesis.
No, probably not. I mean, it doesn't read like the Bible most of us grew up with at all.
Not even close. It doesn't read like poetry or ancient history. It reads like, I don't know, like the source code for a planetary operating system.
Yes.
It's technical, it's legal, and it's just incredibly precise.
Source code is actually the perfect way to frame it. The mission of this deep dive isn't to rehash the Sunday school story of creation with the birds, the bees, the apple, the snake. We have all heard that.
Right, we know that version.
We are here to unpack a very specific retranslation that frames the build not as some magical event, but as a technical reclamation project.
Reclamation. That implies something was lost or broken, which is already a huge shift in perspective. And we are going to get into the specific language they use, words like digital static, frequency, active build, jurisdiction.
It's fascinating terminology.
It really is. I love the sci-fi feel of a phrase like a frequency, searching for a signal in an ancient text. But before we get into those weeds, give us the high-level view. Why rewrite Genesis like a technical manual?
Well, it's about stripping away the familiarity so you can actually see the function. When we hear, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, our brains kind of just go on autopilot.
Yeah, it's like a fairy tale opening once upon a time.
Exactly. But the sources we have today argue that the Hebrew text is actually describing a transfer of authority, an imposition of order upon chaos. It's closer to an engineer debugging a corrupted server than a gardener planting seeds.
Okay, debugging a corrupted server. I really like that image. Let's test it against the text itself. We start with verse 1. Standard translation is, in the beginning, which is a timestamp. It tells us when.
Right. But this text translates the Hebrew word resheth as in the headship.
In the headship. That sounds very corporate or even military.
It's hierarchical. Resheth comes from the root word for head or chief. By translating it as headship, the text is making a very specific argument.
Which is?
That creation doesn't start with a time. It starts with a rank. It starts with an authority structure. It is saying that before there was matter, there was management.
So it's not once upon a time, it's from the office of the CEO?
Precisely. It establishes the chain of command immediately. And then look at the action verb. Usually it's translated as it created. But here, it says reshaped and cut out.
Yahweh reshaped and cut out the heavens and the earth. That feels very, surgical.
The Hebrew word is bara. And while create is a valid translation, cut out or shape implies a much more deliberate, almost architectural process.
Like drafting.
Yeah. If you cut out a piece of metal or wood, you are separating it from the scrap. You are defining its edges.
Which implies there was scrap to begin with.
Exactly. It implies raw material already existed. It frames the creator not as a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat, but as a master architect or a lead engineer working with intention.
Okay, so we have the architect. Now let's look at the job site. Verse 2. This is usually the formless and void part of the story, which, let's be honest, is a bit abstract.
Oh, definitely.
I have never really known what formless actually looks like.
It is hard to visualize nothingness.
But this translation, it calls the earth a digital static without a jurisdictional master.
I absolutely love this modernization. The Hebrew phrases there are tohu and bohu. They traditionally mean waste, confusion, chaos, emptiness.
But digital static, that paints a very specific picture for me. I am thinking of an old television screen with no signal. Just that aggressive, buzzing, black and white snow.
Exactly. And think about what static is. It's not just silence.
No, it's loud.
It's noise. It is interference. It's a scramble of information that creates absolutely no meaning. If the universe is a hard drive, tohu and bohu means the data is completely corrupted. It is glitching.
And the text adds, without a jurisdictional master. That feels like the diagnosis for the glitch. The reason it's static is because nobody is running the control board.
Correct. It is a lawless zone. It's unmanaged territory.
Oh.
In IT terms, it's a server that hasn't been configured. It is just generating heat and noise.
And nothing useful.
Right. This is key because it sets up the problem that the rest of the chapter has to solve. The problem isn't that there is no stuff. The problem is that the stuff is in chaos because it lacks governance.
So enter the solution. The text says the Ruach, the Spirit, moves upon the waters. But listen to the description here. It says it moves like a frequency searching for a signal.
Which connects directly to the static metaphor. If the problem is noise, the solution has to be a clear signal, a specific frequency.
It's like when you're driving out of the city and the radio starts getting fuzzy, you are spinning the dial, scanning, looking for that exact moment the song cuts through the hiss.
That is the active scan of the Spirit. It's not just passively floating around. It is analyzing the chaos, looking for a place to lock in, preparing to establish a connection.
Information theory talks about this, right? Signal versus noise.
Yes, exactly. Creation, in this view, is the process of maximizing signal and eliminating noise.
And when that signal locks in, verse 3, let there be light. But again, the text stops us from thinking about light bulbs. It says, let there be light, which is the word O. And it specifically notes not just a candle, but the illumination of truth and order.
This is a crucial distinction. We are not talking about physical photons yet. If we are fixing digital static, then light is information. It is clarity.
It's the code compiling correctly.
Beautifully put, yes.
So light is literally the opposite of the static.
Precisely. It's truth and order. In a chaotic system, the most radical thing you can introduce is order. It's the defragmentation of the drive, organizing the files.
And when Yahweh sees this light, this order, verse 4 says, he saw that it was good, but the text redefines good as functional, synchronized, and regal.
I think this is where a lot of people get tripped up on Genesis.
How so?
We read the word good, and we immediately think moral. We think, oh, God is a nice guy, good versus evil.
Right, like a comic book.
But the Hebrew word tob is much more practical than that. It means it works. If you build a car engine, you turn the key and it hums perfectly. You say, that's good.
Right. You don't mean the engine has good morals.
Exactly. You mean the engine is functional. It is operating exactly as designed.
The word synchronized really drives that home for me. It means all the parts are moving together, the static is gone, the signal is clear, the system is finally online.
And because it is functional, it has to be protected. You can't just leave a perfectly running engine out in the rain.
You need a hood.
You have to put a hood on it. You have to separate it from the elements.
Which leads right into the separation in verse 4. He divides the light from the darkness. But our text calls it dividing the jurisdiction of the saints from the Babylonian static.
Okay, we need to camp out on jurisdiction for a minute. This is really the heartbeat of these documents.
It's a heavy word. It sounds very legal.
It is legal. Jurisdiction. Literally, to speak the law. A jurisdiction is a defined territory where your authority is valid.
Like a county line.
Right. If you are a sheriff in one county, you have no jurisdiction in the next one. The text is arguing that creation was the act of carving out a specific territory, a safe zone, where order and truth are the law, and walling it off from the chaos outside.
And that chaos outside is labeled Babylonian static. Now, Babylon is usually a bad guy in biblical texts, but why static?
Well, Babylon, or Babel, literally translates to confusion. It represents the world system that is completely contrary to the Creator's design.
The noise.
Yes. By calling it Babylonian static, the text is saying that the darkness isn't just an absence of light. It's an actively competing broadcast. It's a jamming signal. Misinformation.
So the jurisdiction of the saints is basically a firewall.
That is exactly what it is. A firewall that keeps the functional, synchronized system safe from the corrupted data outside.
That brings a whole new meaning to the phrase living in the world but not of it. It's about being secure behind the firewall.
It's about knowing which network you are logged into.
So we have the system set up. Now we need to schedule the operations. Verse 5. Yahweh calls the light day and the darkness night. But the text adds these parentheticals that just completely changed my week. It calls day the active build and night the void.
The active build. That is pure developer language right there. Or construction.
It sounds incredibly productive. Day isn't just the hours the sun happens to be up, it's the operational window.
It reframes time itself as a resource for production. If you are in the active build, you're supposed to be building something. You are executing functions, expanding the jurisdiction.
And night being the void implies the shutdown, the necessary pause.
Right. And notice how verse 5 ends. The evening and the morning were the first cycle of the Regal Foundation.
Regal Foundation, again, emphasizing that this isn't just a rock floating in space, it's a palace, a kingdom base.
It grounds the entire narrative in kingship. This is the foundation upon which a kingdom, a regal structure, will sit. It's not a democracy. It's not a commune. It is a monarchy from the very first line of code.
So that covers the Regal Torah text itself. It's dense, it's technical, it is fascinating. But we also have this Saint Study Guide. And this is where I think the rubber really meets the road for you listening at home, because it takes these high concept metaphors and asks, okay, but what are you going to do about it?
The study guide is the application layer to keep with our tech theme. It actually calls this whole process the genesis of the lab.
The lab? Why a lab?
So think about what a lab is used for. It's a controlled environment for testing.
Like experiment.
Right, for proving a hypothesis. The guide suggests that this regal foundation, the Earth, is essentially a testing ground for the saints. We are here to prove that the code works. We are here to demonstrate the function in real time.
The guide breaks this down into 3 key concepts, and the first one circles right back to that idea of authority. It says, in the midst of Babylonian static technical errors, the solution was a name.
Naming is the ultimate act of authority. In the ancient world, and honestly in the coding world too, if you don't name something, you can't control it.
Like a file on your desktop.
Yes. If you have a file simply labeled untitled, it gets lost, it becomes static. But when you give it a specific name, you give it a jurisdiction. You define exactly what it is and what it isn't.
The guide asks a reflection question here that actually made me stop and put my coffee down. It asks, do you seek permissions from the world, or have you established your own jurisdictional name in the kingdom?
That is the pivotal question of identity. It's contrasting the mindset of an employee with the mindset of a ruler.
Write that down for us.
An employee waits for instructions. They wait for permission. Can I take a break? Is this project okay? They are purely reacting to the environment.
They're reacting to the static.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a ruler, someone operating in headship, looks at the chaos and says, I am naming this territory. I am setting the boundaries right here. I am establishing order.
So it's asking if we are waiting for the Babylonian static society, the news, our neighbors, to tell us who we are.
Exactly. Are you letting the static define you? Or are you cutting out your own jurisdiction? Are you the victim of the noise or the master of the frequency?
Speaking of frequency, key concept 2 gets a little vivid. It talks about the emerald green and gold frequency. Now, I know we're not talking about literal colored radio waves here, but this feels like very specific symbolism.
It is. In the broader context of these types of texts, emerald green is often associated with the life and restoration flowing from the throne. Think of the rainbow around the throne in Revelation.
Okay, I see.
And gold is obviously kingship, divinity, absolute purity.
So when the guide talks about tuning into this frequency, it's basically shorthand for the king's channel.
Right. It's the pure signal. The observation in the guide notes that the light was separated from the darkness. The reflection then asks the reader, how are you dividing your active build your day from the void the night of meaningless Babylonian noise?
It is entirely a question of focus.
It's a question of signal integrity. If you are trying to build something, let's say you are building a strong marriage or launching a business, that is your active build.
Right.
But if you sit there and scroll through doom and gloom news feeds for 3 hours, allowing that Babylonian static to bleed into your mind, what happens?
You get interference. You get anxiety, confusion.
And corrupt your own file. The emerald green and gold is a metaphor for the pure instruction, the life-giving signal. The guide is saying, you need to be aggressive about separating that from the noise. You need noise-canceling headphones for your spirit.
That transitions perfectly into the third concept, which I think is the most visually striking part of the whole document, the celestial plumb line.
Oh, this is definitely my favorite part of the study guide.
The text mentions 6 planets aligned over the desert, marking the precision of the architect. Now, I assume this references a specific astronomical event, but the metaphor is what really grabs me. A plumb line.
Well, think about what a plumb line is.
It's a builder's tool, a string with a weight at the bottom. Gravity pulls it straight down so you know if your wall is perfectly vertical.
Right. It relies on gravity, which is a constant. It doesn't lie. You might look at a wall and say, well, look straight to me.
But the plumb line offers objective truth.
Yes. It does not care about your opinion. It does not negotiate.
So by pointing to the planets, the guy is saying what exactly? That the universe has a plumb line.
It is saying that the Creator's precision is written into the mechanics of the cosmos. The planets do not orbit based on feelings. They move with mathematical precision. They are the atmospheric evidence of order.
And here is the contrast the guide sets up, which I think is just brilliant. It asks, Are you looking for signs in the world's news? Or are you observing the atmospheric evidence of Yahuwah's precision?
This is the ultimate static versus signal test.
Yeah.
The world's news is the absolute definition of static.
Changes every hour.
It's contradictory. It is specifically designed to agitate you. It is tohu and bohu in real time.
But the atmospheric evidence, the sunrise, the seasons, the planetary alignment, that is constant.
It is the active build operating perfectly. The guide is challenging you. Where are you looking for your reality check? Are you looking at the screen in your hand that feeds you chaos? Or are you looking at the celestial plumb line that demonstrates absolute control and precision?
It is an invitation to trade anxiety for awe.
And to trade subjectivity for objectivity. You cannot build a Regal foundation on the shifting sands of public opinion or the daily news cycle.
It'll just collapse.
Exactly. You have to build it on a plumb line. You have to align with what is objectively true, not just what happens to be trending today.
Man, when you put it all together, the legal language of jurisdiction, the technical language of static and signal, and the striking visual of the plumb line, it really does strip the fairy tale vibe right out of Genesis.
That's the entire goal. It forces you to take the text seriously as a literal manual for operation.
It's a blueprint for what the text calls technical reclamation. And I think that's a concept we can all apply, regardless of where we are in life right now.
Absolutely.
All right.
Because we all have areas of tohu and bohu in our lives.
Static.
Yes. Maybe it's your finances, just total static. Maybe it's a relationship that feels like corrupted data. Maybe it's just your own mental state.
The text says don't just stare at the void.
Right. Do not just accept the static. Apply headship. Step into that authority. Reshape and cut out a solution. Name the territory.
Establish a jurisdiction. Say, in this area of my life, we are installing a firewall. No more static allowed here.
And then you start the active build. Make it functional. Make it synchronized. Make it regal.
Functional, synchronized, and regal. I think that is going to be my personal mantra for the week. It's such a higher standard than just, getting by.
It is the standard of a king, not a survivor.
So, we always like to leave you with something extra to chew on. These sources give us the blueprint for setting up our own personal jurisdiction, filtering out the static, right? But think about what happens next.
The network effect.
Exactly. What happens when you establish your jurisdictional name and your neighbor establishes theirs? You start linking these nodes of truth and order. You aren't just one firewall anymore. You're building an entirely new mesh network of saints, operating on that emerald green and gold frequency right in the middle of the Babylonian noise.
That is how the active build expands.
So here is the question we want to leave you with today. Look at your life right now. Are you operating in the active build, creating order and function? Or are you stuck in the digital static of the void, just letting the noise wash over you? Are you waiting for the world to give you permission to exist, or have you established your jurisdictional name?
Something to think about the next time you feel the urge to doom scroll. Maybe look up at the celestial plumb line instead.
Tune in to the right frequency. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. We will see you in the next cycle.